Welcome to Maker Camp.
Innovation, creativity, craftsmanship.
Groundbreaking, dedicated, practical.
We're going on the ultimate Maker Camp field trip. We're going up close and personal with some of the most fantastic creatures you've ever seen. We are taking you to Jim Henson's Creature Shop.
Plus the weekend project, the vampire flashlight.
This is the trip that you've been waiting for, and it's happening right now. Thank you for joining us on the final day of Make Believe Week. I'm Camp Director Paloma.
I'm Camp Director Burke.
And I'm Camp Director Sam. And you're about to learn how skilled puppet makers take a bucket of raw materials and turn them into living and breathing creature-y things.
But before we go on this awesome field trip, why don't we check in with our camp counselors, Nick and Sandra. I know you guys are really excited about this one. What are you expecting for today?
Well, I can't wait to find out how they incorporate their animatronics components into the fabrication process.
Me too.
That would be fun.
I'm so excited to hear more about this. I want to see where their inspiration comes from and like why their work is so diverse.
It's a really big treat for us. So calling all campers, we're heading over to Jim Henson's Creature Shop. We're so excited to have you. Welcome to Maker Camp.
Hi. My name's Pete Brook. I'm the creative supervisor here at Jim Henson's Creature Shop, which is where we are. We're in the shop. My main role is to make sure that whatever we do here at the shop looks good, works great, and thrills the audience. So I'm going to take you through basically, as best as I can, the steps we take in creating creatures. We're going to meet a couple of the other key people here at the shop. The Creature Shop was really, we have Jim Henson to thank for the Creature Shop. Its inception was in London when Jim was creating characters for the Dark Crystal. And up until that point, he'd been dealing with the Muppets and all those characters, which obviously became very well known, and he wanted to push the art of puppetry, and so he was developing characters for this film, which ultimately became Dark Crystal. And so he gathered together a lot of different disciplines, people with different techniques, and he gathered them all together, and this actually, as I say, happened in London, and the result was Dark Crystal. After the Dark Crystal was finished, Jim decided to keep all these people together, and we now are 20, 30 years on, we're still in the business of creating characters. We work in movies, commercials, TV shows, and here, for example, is a character that we made earlier this year, and this was for a promotional video for our Creature Shop Challenge show. With all these creatures, we basically start with a design. Now, sometimes the design is inspired by what's in the script, or it's inspired by what the director tells us, or sometimes we're just left to our own devices. In this case, we were pretty much left to our own devices. So I did many sketches, and the resulting sketch, this guy here, was what we used as the basis for this character. It's got many eyes, 10 eyes, and it's a big kind of slug kind of character. And the first step to take the 2D image was to sculpt it in 3D, and basically we sculpted it in clay. Once the sculpture was done in clay, we then took a mold from it and cast it in a substance called foam latex, which is a very skin-like kind of material. It's very flexible, and it's great for making creatures. It picks up all the detail in the sculpture, and like I say, it's very flexible, and so on and so forth. Underneath the skin is a whole bunch of mechanical animatronics. And in that regard, I'm going to introduce you to our resident animatronic genius, John Criswell, who can show us a little bit of the kind of animatronics that are often found underneath these the creatures. Hi, John.
Hi, John.
Thanks. Animatronics are, you can imagine, very crucial to bringing stuff to life. And over the years, we've discovered a lot of different ways of doing it. So I try to put some examples here on the table of different things that we utilize.
Yeah.
Here's a little radio control unit, and this makes the eyes blink. Now, it's just hobby servos that I use to make it work. And all the stuff is all handmade. The biggest challenge with a lot of this is the time. You know, a lot of times we don't have a lot of time to put this together. So you can imagine that makes it very challenging.
Yeah.
Every project is different. Everything we do is unique and wonderful. Here's a cable mechanism for a tail. And just look how lovely of a nice, precise movement you can get.
Wow.
So when John describes, for this tail, for example, he said it's a cable mechanism. Well, what John means is that there are cables running through, very much like a bike cable, you know, like you would see on the brakes of a bike. So there's a housing, and then there's a cable running inside this housing. And by using this custom-made controller and the custom-made pieces here, John can create this incredibly fluid, organic movement. In this case, it's a tail. And like I say, when John was describing the eye blinks, he was talking about them being servo-driven. And indeed, this is sort of a basic eye blink here. The servo is here. And when the servo is activated, it pushes the arm. And you can see how we then can make an eye blink using that kind of technology.
Yeah, it comes across really amazingly well. Like,
Yeah.
It's just that snap is what really just, I love it.
Yeah, I really love how you use all of the animatronic and the electronic components to come together to create a really lifelike creature. Can you talk a little bit about how that technology translates to this natural organic movement, and why, like, we see this and think, like, connect, like, emotionally to these creatures when there's just, like, these animatronic things moving?
Well, yeah, I mean the real key is believability. So, you know, everything we do, we're trying to bring a character to life, whether it be a simple, you know, puppet, very simple puppet kind of character, or whether it be a really complex character. We're still trying to impart the sense that these things really are alive. And so basically we consider that when we're, you know, figuring out how to make it. So like John just showed us the eye blinks. The servo is really the most appropriate thing to use in this instance. It's small, it can be housed in the head, but for something like a tail, it's a completely different kind of movement. So the cables lent themselves as a, if you will, a technique that we could use to create a fluid tail. So basically, you're always aware that something has to look real, and so we will use different techniques to achieve that believability. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it sounds great. It's great to see this kind of behind the scenes look at these things, because you see them and you think that's a real thing. That's blinking, right? That's a real creature. So right. It's really fun to see, you know, how it all works together. Like
here, John's got a pigeon, but this is what's underneath the pigeon.
Wow.
You know, a completely not me. A completely mechanical bird. Can you see the wing mechanism there?
Wow.
That's amazing.
That's beautiful.
And yet it's still so fluid too. It
Yeah.
has such a...
Well, all this is custom machined by John and the various animatronic experts here.
Gorgeous.
It's all designed, and you know, and in this instance, correct me if I'm wrong, John, but you know, you'd go back to a real bird skeleton and figure,
absolutely.
You know,
yeah, we really
use
try
that as
and
your
pay
inspiration.
attention to anatomy and bones, you know, and how nature works. And,
Yeah.
and I think that's how we relate to things sometimes. Is
Yeah.
just, you know, back to nature.
Yeah, back to nature and personality, you know.
And that's such an interesting way that you're controlling it back there. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, this is kind of a unique thing that John's been developing over the years. There's been very many iterations of it, but it's it's almost, you could call it what, like a slave mechanism. It kind of mimics the movements of the wrist and the hand, and it allows a puppeteer to one puppeteer to perform the character and perform many different functions on the character. In the old days, before all this technology, we may have it was generally all cable controlled mechanisms. I'm talking about for things like Dark Crystal and Labyrinth, and oftentimes you'd end up with 4 or 5 puppeteers who are responsible for the performance of one character. So it required a lot of rehearsal and a lot of choreography. Nowadays, with the technology being what it is, we've developed these various systems whereby one puppeteer can be responsible for the performance of one character, and you get much more integrity in the performance, if you will.
Yeah. He's
Yeah.
right.
That is
It's
one of the
so-
coolest. I've never
so
seen that
great.
control before, and it's
Yeah.
just, it looks like it's so natural for a puppeteer to do that, even
Yeah.
for a creature that's much smaller. You still have that hand motion to be able
Yeah.
to
And
convey
it's-
all of these bones at the same
Yeah,
time.
and it seems like something that, like, even, I mean, you could have someone who's just amazingly, advanced at this stuff, having a beautiful control, but also somebody right off the street could just go right in and start
Yeah.
controlling this.
Yeah, you could. I mean, yeah, anybody could do it, really. But I mean, in order to actually bring the character to life believably and perform it, if you will, you'd need to spend a good deal of time.
You need to know how a
rehearsing.
bird moves naturally.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of different elements, not least of which is the whole element of, acting, if you will. Essentially, we're the characters that we create here at the Creature Shop. We don't really just create scary monsters, that for a split-second scene in a movie. We are actually creating characters with personalities that very often talk and emote, so on and so forth. So the puppeteer really needs to know how to act, as well as, in addition to the acting side of things and the ability to perform, they also need to know all the technical aspects of how to operate something.
And Pete, right now everybody's seeing what happens when the battery goes dead.
Oh yeah.
He's not.
This is live.
Yeah,
believe
this
you
is
me.
live. So of course, this is what happens to us sometimes.
So we've got a battery that went down, and it messes with the signal.
Yeah.
So the cable does still have some advantages.
So exactly. Yeah.
It does.
Cables do have some advantages. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I think there's something really beautiful about having the all analog, just
Yeah.
having all those cables work together in a really fluid,
or
beautiful
having the
movement.
balance too
Yeah.
of the modern servers and that working with cables to
Yeah.
get certain specific motions. And what I really like about the control unit you have there is that not only does it allow for the puppeteers to have convey their acting better, but what's really great is that you have to it has to be comfortable. There has to be a level of comfort so you can get into that acting mode even better, and being able to do that instead of having to work with 4 or 5 other people, I think that's tremendous.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is ahead. We're just working on a new project. Actually, we're developing a new project here, and this is ahead from that new project. And basically, underneath the head is something like this, and you can see we've actually created, in a sense, mimicked the puppeteer's hand.
I love that.
That is
The most
great.
efficient way to make a fake hand to control a fake hand.
Yeah, yeah,
All right.
I love that. That's so great.
amazing.
yeah.
And that way, it looks like like one of the classic puppets. It's getting that same range of movement that a hand
Yeah.
would give you, but you're also, and it's really easy to control then because you just map it to a hand.
Yeah, I mean, this is a raw foam skin. They'll have realistic eyes, teeth, mouth. It'll be painted. It'll have hair on it and all that kind of thing. But that's a whole different kind of set of disciplines, if you will. And in actual fact, why don't we introduce Julie Zobel, who's our fabrication expert here, and she spent many years here at the Creature Shop dealing with all those aspects of finish, fabrication, paint, and so on and so forth. And she'll show you a little bit of what she does.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you, Julie.
Hi, nice to meet you too, Paloma. So I have a couple of puppets here. One is maybe recognizable. This is Red Fraggle from Fraggle Rock, and she is a basic hand puppet, which is where Jim started more than in the creature world. Creatures is what he evolved into because he was always interested in pushing the boundaries. But Red Fraggle is a basic hand puppet. Your hand goes up in it and moves her mouth, and she has a rod for her arm. And I have another puppet here who is this is a little rehearsal puppet, almost like a Sesame Street basic puppet. And if you're campers want to start with a simple puppet, this is the kind of puppet that they might want to start with. It's very basic. It's either like this. We take just regular foam that you can buy in like Joann's maybe has some kinds of foam that you can cut up into the shapes that you need. You start with a sketch usually, and we often start, once we have our sketch, with what goes in the mouth so we can set the mouth. And this is a basic mouth palette, and it has two sides, top and bottom, of something that's hard-ish. This is red rubber, but if you're starting, you could use cardboard. And you can put it together with a hinge made of tape. Tape with some kind of thread in it, like duct tape or gaffer's tape is the best. Masking tape will rip. And then we attach a place for your hands to go into, so you're on your way to get a moving puppet head. And then you can start to create your shape around it. So like I said, this particular head is raw, and he has bright red mouth. He is patterned. You can see the seam here. It's glued together to make the shape. And you want to always keep checking that your puppet mouth moves. It's easy for it to get locked down if you're not checking the movement. And if it's a puppet, it's going to talk or make some sort of motion or some sort of sound. So you want to be sure that it keeps moving. And these guys, both of these little guys, have fleece on them. And fleece has nice movement. It's soft. It stretches a little bit. It's possible to use furs too, but like I said, keep checking when you lay on pieces of fabric, whatever fabric you choose, that it actually will open and close so that your mouth is still working. And when you're making a puppet, and this is something that we have fun with in our basic puppets, you can do all kinds of different expressions. This little puppet can go, I need to turn it towards me so I can make sure that she is now looking at you. And we have lots of different eyes and noses. She could have a little pokey nose, and she's somebody else. So when you're making a puppet, it's fun to just have some different options to figure out what your character is. And generally we have sketches and we have particular characters. But sometimes there'll be puppets in the background, and sometimes we get to choose what those are because they're not main characters, and so we get to have fun just like anybody else would when you're making your puppets at home. This puppet is actually carved foam, which is another way you can make a head, and if you enjoy carving or sculpting, this might be the way that you'd want to do it. And he has a wonderful soft mouth that just is foam, so it makes it very expressive.
Yeah, it's like a mouth has kind of a natural smile going on with it.
Yeah.
He does have a little smile curve carved in to his foam,
Nice.
so that you get that very good. Noticing that? I don't know if that was Burke or Sam. I can't see you guys.
That was Sam, and he happens to have his own personal Fraggle with him today.
Oh my goodness. Uh-oh. Which is your favorite Fraggle?
Ooh, Boober.
Oh, good choice.
Thanks.
So, I mean, again, when you are making a puppet, just enjoy, have fun with. This is, by the way, this is double stick tape on the back of the features.
Okay.
Oh, interesting.
Really simple.
So, you can very quickly create some sort of character. And if you haven't decided, if you're creating your own script too, this will help you inform some things about your character. Is he or she happy or sad, sleepy, bright-eyed? Who is this character that you're creating? And just have fun with it. And the littlest things can make huge differences. Whoops, her nose is falling off, so we'll just take it off. Anyway, so these are really, really basic puppets. Now, you've already seen one of our purple people eaters, and those are, that kind of character is much more complicated, but no less fun to make, because that character is revealed in a sculpt in clay, and then is cast in plaster usually, and then skins are made to be the actual character, and it comes out like you saw in the raw foam head that John had on the hand that moves. That's before it's been painted and had all the surface treatment done to it. And those characters can be completely done in paint if you want, and they're very interesting. They have a particular look. They can be reptilian or alien. For heaven's sakes, you can go anywhere if you decide you're doing aliens. But also, you can use, again, you can use fur or you can use hair, which is what we'll be doing on our new characters that you'll see with Pete and Robert in a few minutes. So there are all kinds of surface treatments you can do, and just have fun with it. That's the important part, and just be sure that you bring it to life. Keep checking. We often use mirrors so when we're working we can look at it with a different eye instead of holding it this way and trying to look at it this way. We try to get a little distance from it by facing a mirror and having our puppet talk to a mirror to see how it looks if it was on camera.
Okay, so the trick is really to keep testing as you go to make sure that you're getting that lifelike and
keep testing it, absolutely, because it's easy for things to start getting locked down, and then you're disappointed in the end because it's not as lively as you might have hoped that it would be.
Yeah, that's a great tip for any kind of making that you're doing.
Really?
Just constantly keep checking on it, and whatever project is that you're doing, really just keep up and make sure that it's turning out. Don't forget the first couple of steps. I love that.
Yeah.
And I love that, as you showed us that I mean, there's already so much character just in that mouth flapping that you were doing, so even from then on, you just get to keep building and developing your character.
Right. You can have, there's so many choices, and it's good to sketch because that's a fast way to get ideas for character, but when you're ready to move into 3-dimension, then it's great to have a few choices available, and we actually have, we have noses, we have eyelids, we have eyelashes. We used to laugh in the Sesame Street workshop. We used to laugh and say, it's not a girl until you put eyelashes on it. That was the difference. You could have a character that the only difference from 1 minute to the next was eyelashes, but the gender changed with the eyelashes.
Wow, it's the little details that completely, even when you were putting the features on there, I could immediately start creating a story for this character, like, oh, well, that's the character, you've got the big nose and the droopy eyes, so it's very sleepy.
Right, yeah, you're right, you probably know this guy somewhere in your life, and so you can start to write who this person is. Yeah.
I think that's Sam. I can see that as Sam.
In the morning, I'd say.
Droopy eyes, very, very, very sullen.
I'll give you the morning one.
Yeah. That's not afternoon Sam.
A little bit, no.
Afternoon Sam has wider eyes.
Things a little bit. Thank you. I take these out. I put some double stick tape on the other ones.
You can see just to my right, your left, there are some puppets that are furry, and there are a variety of puppets here. They're all the same fur, though. And they're very different in their characters. These are the originals of the characters that we are redesigning, have been redesigned, and are in the process of being built right now. And maybe Pete wants to talk some about those characters and what that process has been, and a little bit about where it came from, because these are very old puppets, actually.
Yeah, sure, Julie. Yeah, these are actually puppets that Jim Henson made sort of midway through his career, or a little bit early in his career, like in the late 60s. And we're taking the spirit of these characters and redesigning them for a new project, and we're going to make them we're going to push them a little bit more into realism, like as you can see with these designs and so on and so forth.
Wow, those look great.
Yeah, so it's basically taking the spirit of what this was an unrealized project that Jim was involved in, and so we're sort of, in a sense, bringing it back to life, and we're going to try and we are developing it, and look out for it. I'm not sure when it's going to be viewed or what have you when it's going to be available, but look out for it next year. It should be a really interesting project.
Our eyes will be trained, ready for it. We're excited.
Yeah.
Thanks for the
And
preview.
actually, standing next to me is Robert Bennett.
That's a familiar face.
And Robert, you probably recognize, Robert was the winner of Jim Henson's Creature Shop Challenge, which was the show on Sci-Fi earlier this year.
So fun. I had the best time rewatching that in preparation for today's.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Not in this room.
yeah, we're so excited to hear from you about like some of your early projects and what you've been working on and what brought you to the Creature Shop.
Well, I started off just like every other creature designer. I built stuff in my room when I was a kid. I ended up going to the Art Institute of Pittsburgh, and I got my associate's degree there. And then from there, I ended up moving to Orlando, and I worked for Rainforest Cafe for a long time. I worked in a lot of the theme park industries, so Disney, Universal, and you use a lot of the same techniques as you do in the film industry. And I've always been interested in the film industry, and love the Henson Company and all of their films. So when I found out about the show and I had the opportunity to apply for it, I jumped, and I never thought I'd get on the show, but after I did the show, and it was a really good insight into the film industry for me. I'd never been on a set before, never been in front of a camera, so it was just an amazing experience to not only be in the creature shop building creatures, but to see that whole side of the film industry. But now that I'm here and I get to work on, especially this project is so interesting because it's an original Jim Henson, and then Pete had designed. Kind of brought him into more of the creature shop world.
Yeah, just trying to use this as inspiration, use Jim's original designs and his original kind of shapes, if you will, as inspiration, and just coming up with. I mean, these are real quick little sketches.
Oh yeah, quick little sketches.
Yeah.
That would take me quite a while.
Well, yeah. It wouldn't surprise me if there's people watching who could draw. That,
Yeah, I'd love to see
what I mean.
campers, their take on it. So if you're
Absolutely.
watching, give it your own shot and let's see what you'd come up with.
Yeah, let your imagination run wild and just put pencil to paper. It's really quick. It's really easy. Just do it.
So, but what's really been fun for me is working in the theme park industry. You work with certain materials and disciplines, and to actually get to work here and taught by the experts in the industry how to do all these, like even just we're working on hands for this new project, and you start off with a sculpted hand and then make it out of foam latex, and then we made this really interesting little hand. See if I can get it working. Here we go. So it'll close and open.
How
Wow.
It's cable control, but just with string instead of cables.
That's a nice
So
animation.
effective.
And so then, put on this cool little mechanism. And all of a sudden you have a little hand.
Oh.
Wow.
Wow.
That the motion
Just
translates really beautifully. It's very organic.
So yeah. So it's just been a dream for me to be able to learn how to do all this stuff from the best in the industry. So they're all just, they've been so great to me. So it's an amazing experience. And as long as you go after what you love, it'll always turn out. You're gonna have your rocky points. I know I did, but I always persevered, and now I'm here. So
That's great. Well,
anything can happen.
yeah, well, we're so happy to have you, and I think that you had a very deserved win. Your stuff was so amazing on the Creature
I
Shop.
appreciate it.
We,
Yeah, everyone made amazing stuff in 3
Yeah.
days. I've never done anything like that before. I don't know if I do anything like that again. It's very stressful. Luckily, I don't have to. But and it's nice to. We still have time crunches now, but they're nothing like on the show. So it's nice to have a little leeway and wiggle room.
yeah, that's trial by fire if I've ever heard.
Oh yes.
Yeah, and campers. Speaking of that, time management is very important when you're working. We talked about that a couple weeks ago with Sam and Joe's Corner, but yeah, it's really important to plan your projects out, and that show is a really great way to kind of learn what works with time management, project management, and also like trying new things is a great way. Like if something's not working, just scrap it, try something new. So those are some really great skills to have.
And that's really what it was on the show, is you had to think on your feet, and you didn't have time to do something twice. You did it once, and that was it, and you just made it work. So it's a different kind of mindset than working on a project where you have an allotted time to do it. But it makes you, you're right, it makes you much more creative. It makes you think outside the box. You look at different objects in a different light. Packaging. How can I use the outside of that package, and if I paint it, what will it look like? Or I can use this and glue it to that, and all of a sudden I have something else. So, that was really the fun part of the show, is making it work, and making it work the first time.
Yeah. How do you think it's impacted your work afterwards? Like now that you're working with in the actual creature shop, has it made you, a little bit more reckless, work faster? Has it impacted you?
It's given me a little more self-confidence, I think. I think if I had watched the show, I wouldn't have believed that they had made that stuff in that time frame, and so it made me realize that I can do stuff really fast to make it look decent. But I think, yeah, I guess I'm just more confident now with myself.
That's awesome, and we're so excited to see what you do and what the whole Creature Shop continues doing with this amazing work. And thank everybody there for sharing it with us. It's been awesome. This has been awesome, finding out what's behind the scenes and what's going on. So really, really, thank you so much for being here with us.
Oh, thank you guys for having us.
Yes, so I think now we want to head on over and see what all of you amazing campers have questions for these really wonderful people. So let's check in with our counselors and see what you've been asking.
Thanks, Paloma. We have a few campers over at the Hartford Library, and they want to know, how can people like them start to get into making puppets? And I guess this is sort of for everybody, but like, what were some of your guys' first projects, and how'd you get started making them?
So the question was, how do you get involved in making puppets?
Right.
Boy, that's an interesting question, because there are so many different kind of ways that you could get involved. I mean, I think the common thread through, I've been doing this for a long time, and the common thread that I find through everybody that I work with, who in the industry, if you will, is that as a kid, and when I say kid, I mean in your teens, 11, 12, 10, 11, 12, up until 17, 18, even college age. The common thread is that everybody seems to have a desire and a passion and a love for making things. Whether in my case it was drawing and sculpting, and I was really into monster movies and Star Wars and all that kind of stuff. And I was fascinated about the prospects of, well, how do you actually do that? How do you make it? If you watch Star Wars, how do you actually make the aliens? And in John's case, because I've known John for a while, same thing. John was really passionate about monster movies and special makeup effects and so on and so forth, and was also interested in mechanical things. So he kind of combined those two interests. Game with Julie and with Robert, same thing. There's an interest at an early age for making stuff. So really, I don't know whether there's a specific route that you could take, or route, as you guys would say, that you would take to get to where you want to be. But I think fundamentally, you really just need to, if you love puppets or creatures or what have you, sculpting or drawing or mechanics or costume making, fabrication, whatever it may be, if you really love it, then do it. And it's kind of one of those situations where fortune favors the brave. You'll find that doors open for you if you really have the desire and the passion and the need to do it. I don't really know of any specific courses or classes or that kind of thing that you can do. I'm sure you can find them online.
But I would say that I mean, Pete went to art school.
Yeah.
And I ended up in theater and design, and so the two of us we were both in design courses, which gave us an opportunity to create in a certain way. And John his passion was so profound that he was in the basement, right, making things.
I couldn't afford to go to college or anything, so I had to do it at home, which was great for me, you know. And I did like Robert, found objects and made it work, you know.
So
but
just
that's
do
the
it.
important thing: do it. You know?
And then you started getting experience really fast with people who had been in it longer, so that you could learn from them.
Absolutely.
So it's just it's getting the experience any way that you can get it.
That's great, and it's so inspiring.
Yeah, that's a really important message, especially in this day and age, because access to the internet, having that ability to go online and find out more about these kind of projects is easier than ever before. And more importantly, when you are starting off, when you're not sure exactly what you have that passion for, that's the best time. It's actually a really exciting time, and it's really important to understand that just because you're not sure what you're really passionate about yet, that means you have opportunity to find. It could be anything, and it's an exploration in yourself and outwards. You have to try all sorts of different things and find something that clicks.
Yeah. And thank you so much for actually being here to maybe inspire some future Creature Shop designers. I mean, maybe they're watching, and this was the thing that they needed to get started making and creating in their own basement.
Sure.
So let's jump to another question, because I'm so excited to hear what all of you have to say.
We've got a question for John from Camper Sam, who's making a breathing mechanism for an animatronic alien, and he's wondering if you guys have any tips for making it look lifelike.
Breathing mechanism, actually, I'm glad you asked that question. If you come over here to the Pigeon, I'm not sure if this still works. Remember, the Pigeons are quite old, but this is very simple. Nah, that doesn't work anymore. Anyway, there was, at one time, and there still is, it's probably gone bad, but I just used a little balloon in here and connected to a tube. And so literally for the shot, you could imagine a close-up shot on the bird, and you just breathe into it. And the bladder is in between the skin and the fiberglass, or sorry, the vacuform underskull. So it would sit like right here, where you might see him, breathe in and out. So that's one way. I've also done it where I would use a servo motor or even a cable. So there's many different ways to do that, but the bladder or the balloon is the easiest way.
Yeah, you could maybe just get one of those little balloons, attach it to a hose like you've got,
like that.
And I mean the simplest way is just use your mouth to blow it up, and simulate the breathing. Is it working?
Yeah,
you could just simulate the breathing,
after a while.
That's a really simple way of doing it for sure.
Absolutely.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, and if you've got an alien, just again bear in mind where would it breathe from? Where are an alien's lungs?
Yeah. Maybe he's got gills, at which point I've done a few times where I've made little cable mechanisms that would go to gills on a makeup, and maybe the gills would move.
Yeah.
So there's lots of different ways. That's the wonderful thing about what we do is it's sky's the limit.
And actually, let me just jump in here just for a second, because it's a good question as regards breathing, because it's one of those things that can make or break the believability. Even if you've got a talking character and it's blinking and moving its eyes and moving its brows and so on and so forth, if it doesn't breathe, it might ruin the effect.
Yeah.
So just to add just a little breathing as a sort of a subsidiary motion,
Absolutely.
again helps in the whole believability of it. So good call.
Good one. Good question.
Great question.
Yeah,
and
really.
let's get another one, because these are really fun.
Yeah.
Well, Roselia wants to know what everyone's favorite tool is to work with. Do you guys have any favorites or something that you use more frequently than others?
Favorite tool? Did you say?
Yeah.
Depends on the project, I'd say.
This is a good one. It's called a pencil. And,
Interesting. Tell us more.
Seriously, I love pencils, and that's a good tool for me. And I have a favorite little sculpting tool that I use as well.
I'll go with the pencil too.
And I have curved scissors that I use in so many ways. Just a little tiny curve to the blade, so that I can use it with the curve or against the curve and get different effects with the on the surface of the character.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
Simple tools.
Yeah.
Robert, how
Do
about
you have a favorite tool?
I have a favorite sculpting tool. So I have my little. I can't sculpt without it. But yeah, it's every project you have.
Different need.
Yeah, you have a different need. You have your specific tool for each need.
Yeah.
That's great. Great question.
And the conceptual tools rank really highly amongst the most often used.
Yeah, definitely. Well, because finishing is going to change for each project. So, like
Yeah,
the
that's
beginning ones are really the ones that you get closest to.
Yeah.
It could be a paintbrush.
Yeah, it could be a paintbrush, yeah.
That would be good too. I want to know: are there any certain materials that you have either used in a really interesting way that you didn't think you would ever use, like, or like having a material that you go to most often?
Oof, boy, I bet there's loads of materials that we've used that we never thought we'd use. Can you remember any?
Well, I mean, well, the thing is that, I mean, we've been using fleece for years, but fleece wasn't made for puppets. You know, it was actually made for the linings of things to keep things warmer. But it turned out that it had qualities that made really good puppets, and it's nylon, so it's very dyeable, so that we could dye whatever color Jim wanted a puppet to be. So it's been a very, very useful fabric.
Yeah, and I guess you could almost say that apart from the foam latex skin, of which this is foam latex, apart from that material, everything else is stuff that was designed for a different industry or a different purpose. The foam latex is the only thing that I can remember that was formulated specifically for our job, if you will, specifically for puppets and animatronics and special makeup effects.
Remember where it came from, though?
Where did it come from?
Shoes.
It came from shoes. I never knew that.
Yeah, no, it was the foam inserts Dr. Scholl's used.
Oh.
That's where foam latex actually.
Well, there you go.
From.
Nice.
So we're basically using materials that were designed for something else, and we're repurposing them, or there's a quality of that material that we could use, so we just adopt it for our own needs.
So a hardware store can really be a fun place for anybody here.
Yeah.
Love a hardware store because you can just search.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I had a project for last year's Maker Camp where I was making a face piece that was like a cyborg, and I just went to the hardware store and everything looked different because I was just looking at textures and shapes and sizes. Yeah. And for makeup, my favorite is puff paint because you can make muscles with like red puff paint, and it totally looks like fake muscles. So there's a bunch of weird materials out there.
Yeah.
Actually,
cool. Any more questions?
Let's jump over and see if we can get another question from the counselors.
So speaking about foam latex, we got a few technical questions from Peter, who wants to know, what do you paint with other than rubber cement paint?
Oh, good question. Wow. Well, rubber cement paint is okay. It can be a little bit toxic, if you mix it with I forget what it is. It's like benzene or toluene, it can be a bit toxic. We use a couple of different things. Primarily, we'll use a Prozaid or Prosaid, which is a medical adhesive. It's called Pax paint, really, but it's a combination of acrylic paint and Prozaid, which is a medical adhesive, and we use that to paint the skin, building up in layers, translucent layers, and so on and so forth. The one thing you have to bear in mind if you do use something like that medical adhesive is that it gets kind of sticky. So we then, once the paint job is finished, we probably powder it with some translucent powder just to take the adhesive, just to make it not so sticky. But we've also used printing inks, and that as well is a little bit more complicated using printing inks. The inks themselves are difficult to get, but I would tend to stick to like acrylic paint and Prozaid. Would you?
Yeah, there's a lot of good systems too if you check out your local makeup stores.
True.
The high-end makeup stores now carry certain ones. Well, here in town, in LA especially, certain paint systems for foam latex, kind of designed more for the appliance world, the makeup world.
Right.
So there's a lot of stuff out there.
Yeah.
That's great.
Does that answer the question enough?
Yeah, I think
pretty
that's
thoroughly.
That was
very
thorough.
very thoroughly answers that question. It's so fascinating. I could listen to all of you talk all day.
Yeah.
And I think we got time for one more question from the campers. So counselors, make it a good one.
Okay, this is from one of the counselors. People are asking, what inspires you to do the work that you're doing? I know, well, I've heard at least that George Lucas was inspired to make the Star Wars AT-ATs from the big cranes that he saw as he drove to work every day. But is there anything? Your work is so unique. Is there anything that inspires you in daily lives?
Inspiration. Yeah. Wow.
Everything
Yeah.
around us.
Yeah, everything around us. I mean, that's a kind of a broad question, but an important question. I mean,
have an
I guess.
existential
Let's go through. Robert,
What inspires
inspires
me?
you?
Oh. Yeah, I have, when I'm looking for inspiration, I have certain books. There's certain movies that I watch. Like I love Star Wars, a lot of special effects. I have a lot of behind-the-scenes books on making of movies. And whenever I'm bored and I want to make something or I want to sculpt something and I don't really know what I want to do, I usually go through my books or watch certain movies and just get inspired by that. It's things that I know I'll get excited about. So.
That's a really good point, because books or online, we have so much access now to visual things that you never know where that inspiration will come from. And if you're looking at photographs of nature, you might suddenly realize, oh, this lake surface is a really cool skin texture, or you just don't know where that's going to come from. So it's research. I think research is just so much fun. And then I have to say too that coming to work every day with people who are creative and inspired is inspiring, because we feed off of each other. And if you are really stuck, you can talk with your coworkers and get sort of new ideas, fresh ideas, look at something in a different way.
Inspiration. Well, I mean, it varies. Like, I've been doing it a long time, so now I've got so many things stuck in my head that I remember from 30 years ago up until yesterday or even this morning, that I can just use all of that stuff, and it also depends on what you're being asked to do. I mean, we don't tend to be in a situation, or not very often in a situation, where someone says, do anything you like. Generally there's a script or there's an idea of what somebody wants. For example, it might be a character that is evil, or a real stupid character, or a happy character, or a serious character, or something like that. That gives you just enough information to kind of get into the design, if you like, and then if it's like an alien, my kind of thing is, I often, as Julie was talking about research, I get into, I mean, the internet now is so marvelous that you could just Google image and do a Google image search of, say, weird lizard, and all these amazing lizards come up, and there might be a little, oh, that eye looks cool, or wow, look at that, the ear, or wow, its tongue looks cool, and you'll take an element that exists in nature, for example, and use that. Or you might just see a combination of shapes. It might be a cloud and go, it kind of looks like a weird face, and you just remember it, and when you're drawing, you bring it, you use that as your inspiration. There's so many things that you could use. You kind of got to, I think you've just got to keep your mind active in a way, and sometimes I see people getting into like hitting a wall, and they're like, oh, I just, I've got no ideas left. I've got no more ideas left. But it could very well be because they're pursuing one idea, and they've reached the end of that particular idea. And I mean, for me, many times I'll go to Julie or John, or now that Robert's here, I go to Robert and say, what do you think? Give me some feedback. And so if you've got friends or family or colleagues or people that you admire their work, get a little bit of feedback. Sort of that often helps. I mean, I was lucky. I had a couple of people when I first started who really would give me some great tips and tell me what was working and what wasn't working. But boy, just beg, borrow, and steal from the best.
That's good, Pete.
That's really.
I don't know how I'm going to follow that up, except Frankenstein. When I was a little kid, I saw Frankenstein, and when the monster came to life, and that hand, you saw it fall off and out of the thing and move. I was hooked on doing animatronics. So for me, it was the inspiration of that story and the whole idea of bringing things to life.
Wow.
So simple. There
Cool.
you go.
Seek out cool things, keep track of them and record them, surround yourself with amazing people to get feedback,
And set
Frankenstein.
limits. And
Frankenstein.
also setting
Frankenstein.
limits on what you're doing. Like we've been talking about through Maker Camp, putting a framework around what you're doing really allows you to try things you never thought that you would before. And I can't think of a better way to send off on this. I mean, all of you have been so inspirational and in sharing all of your ideas and your work. It's been absolutely a pleasure to have all of you on. I just thank Peter Brook, John Criswell, Julie Zobel, and Robert Bennett. All of you are just so fantastic, and everyone else behind the scenes who came together to make this work. Thank you so much for being with us and sharing your fantastic, awesome stuff with us.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been absolute inspiration to see that. And before we close off Maker Camp, we have a special message from CEO and founder of Maker Media, Dale Doherty.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dale Doherty, and I just want to, first of all, thank everyone who was part of Maker Camp this year, starting really with our team, with Paloma and his camp directors, and Sam and Nick and Sandra, and the many people that you've met through Maker Camp. I'd like to thank our partner, Google, who's helped us do this for 3 years. And Maker Camp is such a wonderful expression of who we are, both as a company and as a movement, what we're trying to, I think, spread throughout the world and inviting people to make. And I'd also especially like to thank the organizers and leaders at the affiliate sites who really created a space for lots of people to come in and make with them. So when we make together, it's a lot more fun, and I think we learn a lot more. So in closing, though, I'd like to kind of issue a challenge to each of you makers, and those of you especially who've become makers throughout Maker Camp. And that challenge might be expressed as every maker tells a story. In other words, when you make something, you've actually not only created that thing, you've created a story. And I'd like to invite you to come tell it. You can use the Google Community platform to tell the story, and you can mark this hashtag, and it says MakerStory in it. Just use the hashtag MakerStory. And what we will do is look, the Make team will look for the best Maker stories, and we will publish them on our blog, and we'll publish the best of them in Make Magazine. And I think some of them will be so good that we'll want to get you to Maker Faire and have you show what you've made. So tell a story about what you've done. It's an experience. It isn't just how things work, but what did it mean to you? And what were the challenges you faced? And just as our guests were talking about recently, your story inspires others to make. And when you see other people making, others get making as well. So every maker tells a story, and we want you to tell your story. So thank you again for being part of Maker Camp.
That's wonderful.
Thank you, Dale.
Thank you very much. And campers, be sure to stay tuned, as we're going to show you how to do the vampire flashlight. It's a weekend project powered by Radio Shack. It uses this very simple magical circuit called the Jewel Thief to take a dead battery and use it to power an LED. Stay tuned for the video. You'll get to see Winter in his true form.
And remember, campers, everywhere you go, find something that inspires you and feeds your home, feeds your dreams, and allows you to try this at home. Goodbye, campers.
Hi, I'm Sam Freeman with Make. The Jewel Thief circuit is a very popular project in the maker community. It can take a high brightness LED that would normally require 3 volts or greater and turn it on with only a single AA battery and a handful of components. Plus, it can do this with a AA that's so drained, most people would call it dead. Yep, this little flashlight is a voltage vampire. This is a moderately difficult build, but it should only take a few hours to complete. Check out the project page for detailed build instructions and a lot more information on how it works. we'll give you a clue. It's not science fiction. You will need the following parts to build this project, many of which can be picked up at your local Radio Shack, and others you may already have in your stash of components. You'll also need these very basic tools for assembling the circuit. We're going to be soldering directly to the battery case's built-in terminals. These are mounted in relatively thin plastic that can easily melt, which will result in killing the battery pack. To be safe, we'll remove them from the case to tin the terminals. Once they're tinned, clip the wires and carefully reinstall them in the case. Next, we'll install the momentary switch, or button, that will activate the light. Tin one of the leads on the switch. Next, strip one end of the black wire and solder it to the lead diagonally opposite. Thread the black wire through the holes in the case, and fit the button in place. Touch the tip of your soldering iron to the switch lead at the battery negative terminal, just long enough to make the connection, and then immediately remove the iron. Next, we'll grab the length of clear and colored magnetic wire and twist the ends together. Now we'll wind the wires around the toroid 10 times. Make sure the coils are evenly spaced and that the wires do not cross each other. When you're done, one pair of wires should protrude from the top of the coil and one from the bottom. Next, clamp one side of the wires and seal the whole assembly with a few coats of nail varnish. We'll want to run current in opposite directions around the toroid, so untwist the wire pairs and swap the colored wires from each side. Then twist the new pairs together to make sure they don't get mismatched. It's a good idea to test the circuit on a breadboard to verify that it's working prior to soldering. If the circuit is dead, head on over to the project page for some troubleshooting tips and tricks. To build the final circuit, begin by wrapping a leg of the 1 kilo ohm resistor around a scrap of wire to form a small loop. Next, bend the middle leg of the NPN transistor 90 degrees up from the flat side of its body and solder it to the resistor's other leg. Next, secure the pair with some heat shrink tubing and cut off the excess leads, leaving just the loop attached. Butt the flat side of the transistor against the back side of the LED as shown, and wrap the outer transistor legs around the LED pins on each side and solder them in place. Then snip the excess leads from the LED and transistor legs. Next, we'll trim and sand off the enamel on the wires protruding from the toroid. Twist one side's wires together and then solder them. Flip these soldered wires into the center of the positive terminal on the battery case and carefully solder them to the terminal. Then trim the excess wire. On the other side of the toroid, slide some heat shrink tubing over the remaining colored wire, sand the enamel off of the end, and solder it to the resistor loop. Slide the tubing up over the solder joint and apply some heat to shrink it. Run the black wire from the battery case through the negative side of the LED assembly, and the bare copper wire through the positive side of it. Pull the wires out to cinch the LED assembly tight against the toroid. Once everything's in place, strip and sand the wires and solder them to the assembly. Trim the excess wires, install the battery, and you're done! Although this was a bit of a tricky soldering project, you'll be happy with the results. It's not only a good demonstration of the clever jewel thief circuit, but it's also a very good use for all those dead batteries. And it's the perfect little flashlight for finding your way around whenever the lights go out.